Get out! The heavy oak door slammed shut, leaving her barefoot in the freezing midnight rain. Her husband had just thrown her away for his skinny mistress. Shivering and humiliated, she thought her life was over. But then a convoy of black SUVs surrounded her. Chicago's most ruthless mafia boss had just found his queen. The digital clock on the microwave glowed a neon green. 11:42 p.m. Victoria Sky stood in the center of her pristine, aggressively modern kitchen on Oak Street. On the marble island sat a perfectly frosted red velvet cake, Dominic's favorite, and 2 plates that had been waiting for over 4 hours. It was their 5th wedding anniversary. Victoria smoothed down the fabric of her silk nightgown, feeling the familiar, heavy weight of anxiety settling in her chest. She was a plus-size woman, soft and curved, with bright, expressive hazel eyes that had long lost their spark. When she and Dominic first met in college, he had loved her softness. He used to bury his face in her stomach, trace the curves of her hips, and call her his safe haven. But that was before Dominic landed a lucrative job as a senior portfolio manager at Caldwell and Hayes. That was before the 6-figure bonuses, the tailored Armani suits, and the sudden creeping disdain for the woman who had worked double shifts at a diner to pay for his tuition. The sound of the front door unlocking made Victoria jump. She wiped her damp palms on a dish towel and pasted on a hopeful smile. "Dominic? Honey, I kept the food warm." Her words died in her throat. Dominic stumbled into the foyer, his tie undone, his hair disheveled, and a cruel, drunken smirk playing on his lips. But he wasn't alone. Clinging to his arm was a stunning, rail-thin blonde woman in a skin-tight red dress. She reeked of expensive gin and cheap intentions. "Dominic?" Victoria whispered, her heart plummeting into her stomach. "Who is this?" Dominic didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. He let out a harsh, barking laugh. "Oh, relax, Victoria. This is Jessica. Jessica, this is the roommate I was telling you about." "Roommate?" Victoria echoed, the word feeling like a physical slap. Jessica looked Victoria up and down, her heavily mascaraed eyes narrowing in visible disgust. "Wow, Dom. You weren't kidding. She really let herself go, didn't she? I mean, look at her. She's huge." Tears pricked the corners of Victoria's eyes, but a sudden flash of anger kept them at bay. "Get out of my house!" she demanded, her voice trembling but surprisingly loud. "Both of you! Dominic, how could you do this? On our anniversary!" Dominic released Jessica's waist and took a heavy, menacing step toward Victoria. The playful, drunk demeanor vanished, replaced by a cold, venomous glare. "Your house?" Dominic sneered, poking a hard finger into Victoria's shoulder. "I pay the mortgage, Victoria. I pay for the electricity that keeps the lights on. I pay for the groceries that you clearly eat way too much of." "Dominic, stop!" Victoria begged, her lip quivering. "No, I won't stop," he snarled, his voice echoing off the high ceilings. "I'm sick of looking at you. I'm a senior partner now. I host galas. I entertain clients with yachts and private jets. And what do I have waiting for me at home? A fat, lazy embarrassment who can't even fit into a sample-sized dress? You're a joke, Victoria. You make me sick." Victoria staggered back as if he had punched her. Every insecurity she had harbored, every cruel whisper she had ever heard, was suddenly being validated by the man she loved. "You don't mean that," she sobbed, the tears finally spilling over. "I worked 3 jobs for you. I paid for your degree." "And I paid you back by letting you live in luxury for 5 years," Dominic roared. He grabbed her roughly by the arm. His fingers dug painfully into her soft flesh. "But the charity ends tonight. I'm done." Before Victoria could process his words, Dominic was dragging her toward the front door. "Wait, Dominic, please. It's freezing outside. Let me at least get my coat, my purse." "You don't own anything here," Dominic yelled, yanking the heavy mahogany front door open. The howling Chicago wind immediately whipped into the hallway, bringing with it a torrent of icy, stinging rain. With a brutal shove, Dominic threw his wife out into the harsh November night. Victoria stumbled, her bare feet skidding on the wet concrete of the front porch, and fell hard onto her hands and knees, scraping her skin. "Get out!" Dominic spat, standing in the warm, golden light of the doorway, with Jessica snickering behind him. "And don't ever come back. I'll have my lawyer send the divorce papers to whatever shelter you crawl into." Slam. The sound of the deadbolt sliding into place was the loudest thing Victoria had ever heard. She knelt there on the freezing concrete, the icy rain instantly soaking through her thin silk nightgown. It clung to her curves, offering zero protection against the biting wind. She pounded on the door, her fists turning raw and bloody, screaming his name until her voice gave out. But the house remained silent. Defeated, shivering uncontrollably and entirely alone, Victoria forced herself to her feet. She had no phone, no money, and no coat. As she began to walk aimlessly down the dark, rain-slicked streets of Chicago, she realized a terrifying truth. She was a fat, vulnerable woman, dressed only in sleepwear, wandering one of the most dangerous cities in America at midnight, and no one was coming to save her. Victoria had been walking for what felt like hours. Her bare feet were bruised and bleeding, completely numb from the freezing pavement. Her wet nightgown clung to her shivering frame, and her lips had turned a dangerous shade of blue. She had wandered away from the upscale neighborhoods and found herself near the industrial district of the West Side, a maze of darkened warehouses, flickering street lamps, and shadowed alleyways. She huddled under a rusted railway overpass, wrapping her arms around her plump body in a desperate attempt to conserve whatever body heat she had left. She was so cold it burned. "Hey, look what we got here." Victoria's heart stopped. She looked up through her wet, matted hair to see 3 men emerging from the shadows. They were rough-looking, smelling of stale beer and damp cigarettes. Their eyes dragged over her drenched, shivering form with predatory amusement. "You lost, sweetheart?" the largest one asked, stepping closer. He pulled a flick knife from his pocket, the blade catching the dim light. "You're a thick one, aren't you? I like 'em with a little meat on their bones." "Please," Victoria croaked, her voice barely a whisper. She tried to back away, but her back hit the cold, damp brick of the overpass. "Leave me alone. I don't have any money." "We don't want money," another one laughed, stepping into her personal space and reaching a filthy hand toward her wet shoulder. Suddenly, a deafening roar shattered the quiet of the night. A sleek, heavily armored black SUV tore around the corner, its high-beam headlights blinding the 3 thugs. The vehicle screeched to a halt mere inches from where Victoria stood, the tires kicking up a massive spray of dirty rainwater. Before the engine even cut off, the doors burst open. 4 men in immaculate dark suits stepped out. They moved with terrifying, lethal precision. They didn't shout. They didn't warn. Within 3 seconds, the 3 thugs were on the ground, groaning in agony, as heavy leather dress shoes pinned them to the wet asphalt. Then, the rear passenger door of the SUV opened. The man who stepped out seemed to suck the oxygen straight out of the air. He was toweringly tall, broad-shouldered, and moved with the slow, deliberate grace of an apex predator. He wore a bespoke charcoal wool overcoat over a tailored suit. His sharp, angular jaw was covered in dark stubble, and a faint silver scar cut through his left eyebrow. He was Aidan Moretti, the undisputed head of the Chicago syndicate, a man whose name was only whispered in back rooms, feared by politicians and police chiefs alike. Aidan's cold, obsidian eyes scanned the scene, his jaw clenching as he took in the sight of the bleeding thugs. Then his gaze landed on Victoria. For a terrifying second, Victoria thought she had just traded one nightmare for an even deadlier one. She squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the end. But it didn't come. Instead, she heard the soft splash of expensive leather shoes approaching her. "Victoria." The voice was deep, gravelly, and surprisingly gentle. Victoria opened her eyes, trembling violently. The ruthless mafia boss was standing just 2 feet away, looking at her as if he had just found a ghost. Without a word, Aidan shrugged off his heavy $1,000 wool overcoat. He stepped forward and wrapped it securely around her shivering shoulders. The coat dwarfed her, enveloping her in the intoxicating scent of expensive sandalwood, dark espresso, and dangerous power. "What happened to you?" Aidan asked, his voice tightening with a sudden, barely contained fury. He reached out, his large, calloused hands gently brushing her wet hair away from her face. His touch was so light, reverent almost, a jarring contrast to the violence his men were currently inflicting on the thugs 10 feet away. I... Victoria's teeth chattered so violently she couldn't form a sentence. She didn't know this man. How did he know her name? "Liam!" Aidan barked without looking away from Victoria. A tall, blonde man stepped forward. "Yes, boss?" "Deal with those 3. Make sure they never walk down this street again. Then get in the front. We are leaving." Aidan didn't wait for a response. He scooped Victoria up into his arms as effortlessly as if she weighed nothing at all. For a woman who had just been told by her husband that she was too heavy, too fat, and too repulsive to love, being lifted with such ease sent a shock wave through her system. He carried her to the SUV and gently placed her in the plush, heated leather back seat, sliding in right beside her. The door slammed shut, sealing them in a quiet, temperature-controlled bubble. "Drive," Aidan ordered the driver, "to the penthouse." As the SUV sped through the rainy streets, the intense heat of the car began to thaw Victoria's frozen limbs. The pain of the cold rushing out of her body made her whimper. Aidan shifted closer, pulling a clean, dry microfiber towel from a compartment and gently draping it over her head. "You're safe now," he murmured, his eyes scanning her bruised feet and the scrape on her knee. His jaw ticked rhythmically. "Who did this to you, Victoria? Who put you out in the street looking like this?" Victoria clutched his oversized coat tightly around her curves. How do you know my name?" she finally managed to ask, her voice hoarse. Aidan stopped drying her hair. He looked deeply into her hazel eyes, and for a moment, the hardened mafia boss completely disappeared. "5 years ago," Aidan began quietly, "I was bleeding to death in an alleyway off 4th Street. 3 bullets in my side. A nursing student on her way home from a diner shift found me. I pulled a gun on her and told her if she called the cops, I'd kill her. Most people would have run, but she didn't." Victoria gasped, her eyes widening in realization. She dragged my 220-pound ass up 3 flights of stairs to her tiny apartment, Aidan continued, his gaze never leaving hers. She spent 6 hours digging bullets out of my ribs with tweezers and a bottle of cheap vodka. She fed me soup, let me sleep on her couch, and never asked for a dime. When I woke up the next morning, I left before she could get involved in my mess. Aidan leaned in, his voice dropping to a dangerous, possessive rumble. I have spent 5 years looking for the angel who saved my life. I finally found her, only to see her shivering in the rain, bruised and broken. So I will ask you one more time, mia dolcezza. His thumb brushed a stray tear from her cheek. Who threw you out? The kindness in his eyes, the absolute safety of his presence, broke the last of Victoria's defenses. The dam burst. My husband, she sobbed, burying her face in her hands. Dominic. He said I was too fat. He said I was an embarrassment. He brought a woman home and he threw me out. He told me I was trash. The silence inside the SUV was sudden and suffocating. The air grew thick, crackling with a terrifying, lethal energy. Victoria peeked through her fingers. Aidan wasn't looking at her anymore. He was staring straight ahead, his eyes completely devoid of human emotion. He looked exactly like the monster the papers claimed he was. Liam, Aidan said softly into the intercom, separating the front and back seats. Boss? Liam's voice crackled back. Find everything there is to know about a man named Dominic, married to Victoria Skye. I want his address, his bank accounts, his employer, and his associates. Consider it done. Do you want me to send a crew to pick him up? Aidan turned his head, his dark eyes locking onto Victoria's trembling form. He took her cold, plump hand in his massive one, pressing a gentle, burning kiss to her knuckles. No, Aidan said, his voice a lethal promise. Cancel my meetings for the rest of the week. I am going to tear Dominic's entire life apart, brick by brick, with my own 2 hands. He threw away a queen. Now, he's going to meet the devil. Victoria awoke to the rich, dark aroma of espresso and the feeling of heavy silk sheets against her skin. She blinked against the bright morning light, flooding through floor-to-ceiling windows. For a panicked second, she thought she was back on the cold pavement. But as her eyes adjusted, she realized she was in a sprawling master bedroom overlooking the breathtaking Chicago skyline, right near the top of the Waldorf Astoria on Walton Street. She sat up, wincing slightly as her bruised feet brushed the high-thread count linens. On the mahogany nightstand sat a silver tray with a steaming cup of coffee, a fresh croissant, and a small velvet jewelry box. The bedroom door clicked open, and Aidan walked in. In the daylight, he was even more intimidating and devastatingly handsome. He wore a crisp white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms inked with intricate, dark tattoos that hinted at a violent past. Good morning, Aidan said, his voice a low rumble that sent a pleasant shiver down her spine. He walked over and sat on the edge of the mattress. How are your feet? Better, Victoria whispered, pulling the silk sheet up over her chest, suddenly intensely aware of her nakedness beneath Aidan's oversized coat from the night before. Aidan, I don't know what to say. Thank you for saving me. You saved me first, Victoria, he replied, his dark eyes tracing the soft lines of her face. I'm just returning the favor, but I intend to do much more than that. He gestured to the closet. I had Liam arrange a few things for you. Victoria hesitantly slipped out of bed, keeping the coat wrapped tight, and opened the massive walk-in closet. She gasped. It was filled with rows of designer clothing, Gucci, Prada, Christian Dior, all perfectly sized for her lush, plus-size figure. There were cashmere sweaters, silk dresses, and tailored coats. Dominic always told me, Victoria's voice cracked. He said designers didn't make beautiful clothes for women my size. He refused to let me buy anything nice unless I lost weight. Aidan was behind her in a second. He didn't touch her, respecting her boundaries, but his presence was a heavy, comforting heat against her back. Dominic is a weak, insecure boy who wouldn't know a goddess if she was standing in his foyer. You are a masterpiece, Victoria. Every curve, every soft edge. A king needs substance to hold on to, not a collection of bones. Do not ever let a worthless man dictate your value. Tears pricked her eyes, but this time they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of profound relief. For the first time in 5 years, she felt seen. While Victoria bathed and dressed in a stunning navy blue cashmere dress that hugged her curves in ways that made her feel powerful, Aidan was busy in his study. The true devastation of Dominic's life was already in motion. Across the city, at the prestigious firm of Caldwell and Hayes, Dominic confidently strode into the lobby, his Patek Philippe watch gleaming under the chandeliers. He was nursing a slight hangover, but otherwise felt fantastic. Kicking Victoria out had been the best decision of his life. He was ready to conquer the day and take Jessica to Aspen for the weekend. He swiped his keycard at the executive elevator. The light flashed red. Access denied. Frowning, Dominic tried again. Red. Mr. Sky. Dominic turned to see 2 massive security guards flanking the firm's HR director. Your keycard has been deactivated, Dominic. Please come with us. What the hell is going on? Dominic demanded, as he was ushered into a small, windowless conference room on the ground floor. Richard Caldwell, the firm's senior partner, sat at the table looking grim. You're done here, Dominic. As of 8 a.m. this morning, you are terminated. Terminated? Dominic slammed his hands on the table. I bring in $20 million a year. You can't fire me. I'm a senior partner. You were a senior partner, Caldwell corrected, wiping sweat from his brow. Last night, a private equity group, Vanguard Holdings, bought a controlling 51% stake in this firm. Their very first directive this morning, non-negotiable, was your immediate termination. They also seized your client portfolio and voided your severance package due to a newly discovered breach of contract clause. Vanguard Holdings. I've never even heard of them, Dominic yelled, his face turning purple. Clear out your desk, Dominic. Security will escort you. Seething, Dominic stormed out onto the street and pulled out his phone to call Jessica. He needed a drink. He dialed her number. It went straight to voicemail. Furious, he hailed a cab and headed straight to the Yves Saint Laurent boutique on the Magnificent Mile, where Jessica had planned to go shopping that morning. He found her at the register, about to purchase a $6,000 handbag. Jess, my firm just screwed me over, Dominic panted, running up to her. Put the bag back. We need to figure this out. Excuse me, Jessica scoffed, eyeing him with disdain. I'm not putting anything back. You promised me this bag. She handed her card, linked to Dominic's Chase bank account, to the cashier. The cashier swiped it. I'm sorry, sir. The card is declined. Try it again, Dominic snapped, pulling out his black American Express. Use this. The cashier swiped the black card. Declined. Sir, it says your accounts have been frozen pending a federal fraud investigation. Fraud? Dominic choked out. Jessica looked at the declined cards, then at Dominic's panicked face. Without a word, She snatched her sunglasses from the counter, turned on her stiletto heel, and walked out of the store. "Jess, wait!" Dominic called out. "Don't call me Dom," she tossed over her shoulder. "I don't do broke." In less than 12 hours, Aidan Moretti had systematically dismantled Dominic's career, his finances, and his ego. But the Mafia Boss wasn't finished. The physical destruction was complete. Now it was time for the psychological checkmate. 2 weeks passed. For Victoria, they were a dream. Aidan treated her with a devotion bordering on religious reverence. He took her to private dinners, walked with her along the frozen shores of Lake Michigan, with a dozen armed guards maintaining a discreet distance, and slowly rebuilt her shattered confidence. She began to see herself through his eyes, beautiful, worthy, and powerful. Dominic, however, was living in a nightmare. His bank accounts remained locked in a perpetual investigation. His car was repossessed. His friends in the financial sector stopped returning his calls, mysteriously terrified of being associated with him. Desperate, Dominic received a heavy, wax-sealed envelope slipped under his door. It was an exclusive invitation to the Winter Gala at the Field Museum, a billionaires' playground. The host's name was blank, but Dominic saw it as a lifeline. If he could just network, borrow some capital, he could bounce back. The night of the gala, Dominic sneaked past the coat check, wearing his only remaining tailored suit, which now hung loosely on his stressed, thinning frame. The grand hall of the Field Museum was breathtaking, lit by thousands of crystal candles, filled with Chicago's absolute elite. Dominic grabbed a glass of champagne, his eyes scanning the room for Richard Caldwell or any of his old clients. Suddenly, a hush fell over the room. The string quartet stopped playing. Dominic turned toward the grand staircase. At the top stood a man radiating pure, lethal authority, Aidan Moretti. The city's elite parted like the Red Sea, lowering their heads in a mix of terror and deep respect. But Dominic barely noticed the Mafia Boss. His eyes were locked on the woman holding Aidan's arm. It was Victoria. She was a vision. She wore a custom emerald green silk gown that draped flawlessly over her lush curves, a daring slit revealing a sleek, confident stride. Diamonds glittered at her throat and wrists, but they paled in comparison to the radiant, fierce glow of her hazel eyes. She didn't look like the broken, weeping woman he had thrown out in the rain. She looked like a queen. "Victoria," Dominic whispered, dropping his champagne glass. It shattered on the marble floor. Aidan's dark eyes locked onto Dominic. A terrifying, predatory smile curved the Mafia Boss's lips. He leaned down, whispering something into Victoria's ear that made her smile, before the two of them descended the stairs and walked straight toward Dominic. "Victoria!" Dominic gasped as she stopped in front of him. He reached out instinctively, but Liam, stepping from the shadows, slammed a heavy hand onto Dominic's chest, stopping him dead. "Do not touch my wife," Aidan said, his voice quiet, yet carrying enough menace to freeze Dominic's blood. "Wife?" Dominic stammered, looking frantically between them. "Victoria, what is this? Who is this man? Have you been sleeping with him behind my back?" Victoria let out a soft, elegant laugh. It was a sound completely devoid of pity. "You threw me out, Dominic. You said I was garbage. You said I was too fat for your high society life." She gestured to the room of billionaires staring at her in awe. "It seems my new husband's society suits me much better." "Victoria, please," Dominic begged, the reality of his situation crashing down on him. He realized with sudden, horrifying clarity who had orchestrated his downfall. "You have to help me. I have nothing. My accounts are frozen. I lost my job. Jessica left me. I'm ruined." "I know," Victoria said coldly. "And frankly, Dominic, I don't care." Aidan stepped forward, towering over the broken man. "You made a grave mistake, Dominic. You thought you were discarding a burden, but you threw out a diamond because you were too stupid to know its worth. I bought Vanguard Holdings just to fire you. I froze your Chase accounts." Dominic trembled, tears of humiliation welling in his eyes. "Please, I'll leave the city. Just give me my house back. Give me my life back." Aidan pulled a folded legal document from his tuxedo pocket and dropped it onto Dominic's chest. Dominic fumbled to catch it. "What is this?" Dominic choked out. "That is an eviction notice," Aidan smiled darkly. "I bought the debt on your pristine, modern house on Oak Street this morning. You missed one mortgage payment due to your frozen accounts. I foreclosed on it. The locks were changed 10 minutes ago. Your clothes have been thrown on the front lawn." Dominic stared at the paper, his jaw unhinged in absolute horror. "No. No, you can't do this. Where am I supposed to go?" Victoria looked him up and down, her expression perfectly serene. "It's cold out tonight, Dominic. I suggest you start walking." She turned her back on him, slipping her hand into Aidan's. "Throw him out," Aidan ordered his men. "Make sure he uses the alley door." As two of Aidan's massive enforcers grabbed Dominic by the armpits and dragged his kicking, sobbing form out of the gala, Victoria felt a profound weight lift from her shoulders. Aidan pulled her close, his hand resting possessively on the curve of her hip. "Are you all right, mia dolcezza?" he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. "I am perfect," Victoria smiled, looking up at the ruthless, terrifying man who had given her the world. "Take me home, Aidan." And as they walked out into the crisp Chicago night, surrounded by wealth, power, and untouchable security, Victoria knew she would never be left out in the cold again. The king had found his queen, and the syndicate would bow to her forever. And that is how a broken wife transformed into the untouchable queen of the Chicago underworld. Dominic thought he could throw Victoria away like trash, but he didn't realize he was dealing with the devil himself. What did you think of Aidan's brutal revenge? Did Dominic get exactly what he deserved? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you loved this dramatic mafia romance, smash that like button, share with your friends, and subscribe for more daily revenge stories.